The older lady is fired. Clean everything up and leave. Carol, the president's daughter who became the head of the design department, said, I've been with this company for 40 years and have designed 90% of our flagship products, but she seems unaware of that. So, I decided to take action. I'll clean everything up nicely before leaving, I said, and then wiped all my PC data and resigned. As a result, Carol faced an unexpected turn of events. I'm Victoria Simmons, 62 years old. I work in the design department of a stationery manufacturer. I've been here since I was a fresh graduate, for 40 years, and I'm still active even after retirement age. I strive not to be outdone by the younger ones. I lost my husband 10 years ago, and my daughter lives alone. It's hard to say this about myself, but I've designed 90% of the company's flagship products. Therefore, I believe I hold significant value to the company. Stationery is wonderful. It's about dreams. Designing for writing, drawing, painting, erasing, measuring, making each task functional and enjoyable. These designs cater to everyone, from schoolchildren to professionals. How long I can continue, no one knows. But since I love my job, I joke with the younger employees that I'll keep going until I can no longer stand. One morning, the President Kennedy, who I joined the company with, showed up at a meeting. It had been a while since he attended. He brought a woman with him. Good morning, everyone. It's been half a year since I last saw all of you, hasn't it? Victoria, you're looking well. Kennedy and I joined the company in the same year. He used to be in sales, and we often talked at internal product presentations. Unlike the typical arrogant son of a president, he's sincere and humble. It's been 10 years since he took over from the previous president. Today, I've brought the replacement for the department head who recently left. Kennedy encouraged the woman beside him to greet everyone. She stepped forward and greeted. Hello, I'm Carol Kennedy. I look forward to dedicating myself to the future growth of our company. Please, let's work well together. Everyone in the department was surprised. No one had expected the president's daughter to be appointed as the head of the department. As you all may know, our company is planning to expand overseas starting this year. We sent Carol to study abroad for a long time for this reason. She will help us create designs that are globally competitive. Let's all unite in this effort. After saying so, Kennedy left in good spirits. Wilson, one of the colleagues, approached me.
Victoria, what do you think about her? Carol, I mean. I've known Carol since she was a child. We've never spoken, but the president used to bring her to company recreation events. Haven't seen her in a long time, but she's grown into a fine young lady. I think the president wants to make use of her international experience. But whether she understands the design industry is another question. So, we'll see how she does, huh?
I could sense a hint of disdain for Carol in Wilson's expression. Wilson, we just need to focus on our responsibilities. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. However, as it turned out later, Wilson's intuition was spot on. A month had passed since Carol took charge. We continued as usual, brainstorming new ideas for stationery and designing in front of our computers. Everyone, I have something to say. Is that okay? Carol said so and walked to the center of the room. She then started speaking. We will start developing products for the international market next month, starting with UK. If things go well, we will establish a base in London and then expand to hub offices in various locations. Wilson's eyes widened. So, as a start, we will develop new products. The ideas and designs will be decided through an internal competition. The strategy was to sell some of our existing products while simultaneously developing new ones. The release of the new products, both domestically and internationally. It was set for 6 months later. I had a question. Carol, is there a specific concept for the product development? Her face, which had been amiable until then, hardened. The fact that I didn't mention a concept means it's the same as before. Simmons, you're our most veteran employee, right? I didn't expect such a basic question from someone like you. I was taken aback by her unexpected response. If I had to say, I don't want anything outdated. With a composed face, Carol finished speaking and returned to her desk. The internal competition was held weekly. I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if, like Hollywood movies, American origin stationery could become popular worldwide? I kept searching for new product ideas. What's different from my younger days is that the number of ideas that come to mind decreases with age. However, the quality of each idea has certainly improved. So, I wasn't worried even if I didn't come up with ideas every week. But Carol seemed not to tolerate that. In this past month, everyone has worked hard. We've had over 200 ideas, with Wilson contributing 20%. It's not just about quantity, especially since we don't know what the market expects. We need as many ideas as possible. She was clearly speaking with me in mind. Unfazed, I gave Wilson, who was modestly giving a thumbs up, a secret wink. Well, it can't be helped if nothing comes up. But, as professionals, is it acceptable? Only 5 ideas in a month might indicate you've run out of ideas after being in the business for so long. I don't understand that world, but it doesn't seem like you're trying. She looked straight at me, without averting her eyes even once. After the meeting, Wilson came to me. Thanks to you, Victoria. Your way of expanding associations was amazing. Ideas just keep coming. But Carol is too blatant. It's really annoying. It's okay. It's true that not many ideas are coming out. But, has she seen your ideas? Just talking numbers here. 1 of yours equals 10 of ours. Does she understand that? That's all right. Maybe the British won't like my ideas. The final judgment is by the users. Another month passed. We narrowed down our ideas and designed about 50 specific products from them. None of my ideas were selected, but about 5 of my designs were nominated. Carol seemed displeased by that. Today, a buyer from UK, Mr. Lee, will visit us. He's agreed to take over our agency there. We hope to decide today, but at least we want to narrow it down to about 5. Especially the younger ones, look forward to it. In the afternoon, Lee arrived and headed to the conference room with Carol. They returned after about 3 hours. Congratulations, Wilson. I think it will be one of your 3 designs. Carol spoke to Wilson with a big smile. He looked surprised. Later, I heard that everyone thought one of my designs would be chosen. Thank you. But, are you sure? Shouldn't it be Victoria's? That's fine. Mr. Lee liked it, and so did I. Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Indeed, we can't match the sensibilities of the younger generation. Simmons, it's unfortunate, but that's how it is. Carol said that with a spiteful look. That might be true. I have no hard feelings about Wilson being chosen. In fact, I'm genuinely happy for him. It's wonderful when my colleague makes their mark in the world. I spoke from the heart. Then, Carol's face flushed with anger. That's so irritating. What's with this saintly act of yours? You can only come up with 4 or 5 ideas a month and still act so high and mighty. Do you think everyone respects you just because you've been here the longest? Her words were unexpected. I never thought she saw me that way, but at the same time, my anger was ignited. Excuse me, but how much do you actually know about design? Do you remember the process of selecting everyone's ideas and designs? None of the works you favored are left in the final selection. You lack a professional's eye. You don't understand our struggle. At that point, she lost her composure. Oh dear. To think you'd say such things to me. I'm a manager, you know? She approached me. Her eyes bloodshot. You're done here as of today. The older lady is fired. Clean everything up and leave. I was surprised by her sudden change, but I felt no resistance to her command to leave. Though I thought her remark about being an older lady was uncalled for. I understand. I'll clean everything up nicely before leaving. But I'm worried about what happens next. What are you talking about? Worrying about what happens after you leave? Don't pretend to care. The department will rejuvenate, and the young energy will keep coming. It's all good. She laughed triumphantly, looking as if her anger had subsided. I'm relieved to hear that. I'll start right away, I said emotionlessly and began clearing my belongings. There was nothing particularly important to keep or hand over, so I discarded almost everything. I saved my designs on my memory stick, wiped the PC data, yes, erased everything. I also cleared the shared memory on the internet. Hey, Simmons, don't forget to submit your resignation. It's the rule. Of course. After saying that, I immediately wrote my resignation letter and handed it to her. She remarked, "Wow, that was quick," and took it with a refreshing smile. I tried to appear relieved, but I couldn't tell how she perceived it. Then, until the end of the day, I went around bidding farewell to my colleagues. That night, they hastily organized a farewell party for me. Surprisingly, it turned into a chorus of criticism and complaints about Carol. I became increasingly worried about the future of the design department. The next morning, I woke up to bright sunlight. It seemed I had gotten drunk last night, for the first time in many years, so much so that I couldn't remember when last I had felt this way. I had forgotten to close the curtains on the east-facing window and slept through. Suffering from a rare hangover, I groaned while heading to the kitchen. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and gulped it down. Then, I sat on the living room sofa, feeling blank. My mind was empty, but that was a sensation I hadn't felt since my student days, which strangely made me a bit happy. However, old habits die hard. Despite not feeling hungry, I thought I should make breakfast.
Take it easy, you have all the time now,
I said to myself and chuckled. Then I thought of calling my daughter and visiting her.
Right, I should do what I've always wanted to do,
I muttered. Just then, my mobile phone rang. It was Kennedy. Good morning, Mr. Kennedy. What's the matter? Calling so early. It's not about what's the matter, Victoria. I tried calling you last night too. Never mind that. Could you come to the office, please? But I resigned as of yesterday. Just come, please. This is an order. I'll be in my office. All right. An order, that's not something one says to someone who has resigned. Yet, I thought, if he's insisting so much, it must be something urgent. I soothed my aching head with hot coffee, gulping it down as it cooled. Then, I called a taxi and headed to the office. Excuse me. I knocked and entered the president's office. Good morning. Sorry for calling you in so early. Kennedy wanted to hear about what happened yesterday. I explained everything, careful not to exaggerate my words or reactions. I see. I am very sorry about that. He expressed his deep apology. The mess my foolish daughter made is my responsibility as her father. It seems I made mistakes in raising her. Victoria, would you consider withdrawing your resignation? We started here together, after all. Please. I had harbored no negative feelings towards him, only gratitude for employing me for a long time. But his words caught me off guard. President Kennedy, it's not fair using our shared past like that. So, will you? All right. I'm counting on you. Morning. Saying that, he entered the design department office. I was told to wait in the hallway until called. The door was left open, so I could hear the conversation inside. Dad, what are you doing here? Did we have a plan? Do not call me Dad here. His uncharacteristically stern tone seemed to surprise Carol. I have a question for you, Carol. What is it? The two began to speak in a formal tone. Why did Victoria resign? Oh, as per her resignation letter. Personal reasons. Don't lie. Kennedy glared at Carol as he spoke in a low voice. It's not a lie. She left because of her age. The surrounding staff were all left speechless. Don't lie. I've heard everything about what happened. In that instant, Carol glanced sharply at the employees. Someone spilled the beans. And muttered under her breath. Suddenly, Kennedy raised his voice. Don't make a fool of me. Carol stood up, startled, her eyes wide open. Victoria. I was called and immediately entered the room. Carol's eyes were so wide open, it seemed they might fall out.
Carol, I heard it from Victoria. You don't seem to understand what you did.
She seemed to have calmed down a bit. Even so, she took a deep breath before proceeding. How do I know if her story is true? Fool! Carol collapsed to the floor. Who do you think you are? Don't underestimate the real world. Listen, you don't understand Victoria's value to our company at all. The conversation had turned into one between parent and child. It's not just about how long she has worked, Carol said defiantly. Kennedy was completely exasperated.
How dare you? Victoria has been faithfully serving for 40 years, designing 90% of our flagship products. She's the backbone of our company. Without her, the design department would fall apart. She's irreplaceable. You, on the other hand, are easily replaceable. Understand?
Carol was at a loss for words, but she bit her lip and glared at Kennedy.
Then you should have told me that. How am I supposed to know if no one tells me?
She spoke like a petulant child, and laughter could be heard from the staff. Carol glared at them. Seeing that, Kennedy turned towards the staff.
Everyone, I am truly sorry. This incident is my responsibility as her father.
That's right, I never wanted to be in this department in the first place. Dad is to blame. I thought my blood vessels might burst. You are unbelievably hopeless. Kennedy and Carol both looked surprised, caught off guard. I had made up my mind. Carol, let me be clear. You are not cut out for a managerial role. In fact, you have a fatal flaw as a professional. Your conversation with President Kennedy just now proves it. You may have forgotten, but you called me an older lady. And as I've said before, your judgment in design is non-existent. It's hopeless. Carol was still in shock. I've changed my mind and decided to come back to work, for the sake of the president and the design department. I've chosen to cherish my passion. I then said to Kennedy, I'm sorry for my outburst. He shook his head and replied,
Not at all. Thank you.
Carol was biting her lip in frustration again, this time looking down. Then, a phone call came. It was for Carol, but after a moment of hesitation, Kennedy answered it. The caller was Lee. Kennedy listened, nodding and showing surprise at times, and eventually said,
That's fine. I apologize for the inconvenience. We look forward to continued cooperation.
He hung up. It was about the selection of the design. Lee said that although my design was his top choice, he reluctantly went with Wilson's due to Carol's strong insistence and persuasion. He found it hard to discard my design and thus reached out. It seemed that Carol had come to terms with the situation. She finally seemed to surrender. She dropped like a wilting sunflower. After Lee's call, Kennedy laid out the conditions to Carol in front of the staff.
You will decide your own future. If you want to work in our company, start from the new employee training. Otherwise, you'll be assigned to one of our client companies.
Greatly humbled, Carol replied in a faint voice, Yes. After the two left, all the staff gathered around me, expressing their joy. Although it was the unfortunate outcome for Wilson. See, I told you. This is for the best. He said with a smile. Indeed, it seemed like things turned out just as he and everyone else had initially felt about Carol. That experience reminded me of how important intuition is for a designer. Subsequently, our market expansion into the UK went well. This time, we targeted teenagers. We found that the sensibilities of American and British teenagers are quite similar. While I don't think it applies to all age groups, it was a revelation. Considering the global use of social media, it's clear that sharing of sensibilities is happening faster than imagined. So, I believe that designs aimed at American consumers could also sell well. At my age, I never thought I'd be doing work with such a worldwide impact. I'm more motivated than ever. Visiting my daughter will have to wait. I guess it'll be another video call tonight. You're replaceable. You're fired. Elaine, the president's daughter, spat out at me. I had reached my breaking point. Without retorting to her words, I quietly accepted my dismissal.
Understood. If I must leave, then so be it.
Emotion had drained from me. I responded in a voice lacking any spirit. Well, goodbye then. She waved at me, her face brightening with relief. I started preparing to leave the company I had once been grateful for.
Then, I shall resign.
On my last day, I went to say goodbye to Elaine. It was already too late for her. Not only was I leaving, but I also decided to leave a parting gift for the company. Would you reconsider your resignation? Elaine asked me, tearfully. Ridiculous. She was the one who fired me. I am Bonnie, 40 years old. Living alone in urban, I'm single and have devoted my life to my job. My parents live in another state, quietly enjoying their retirement. Both my parents were salespeople, which probably influenced me. From a young age, I was good at negotiating and getting along with people, whether getting extra prizes from the candy store or winning over my classmates' mothers for fancy birthday gifts. I had always wanted to use my strengths in a sales career. Eventually, as an adult, I worked in various sales roles before joining this staffing agency through a mid-career hire. In this competitive industry, our small company struggled to sustain profits without contracts from large corporations. Amidst that, I was always the top in new contracts, labeled as the company's promising newcomer, which became my confidence and success. However, I also faced persistent harassment from Elaine, the president's daughter. She had once been in sales and enjoyed popularity as the president's daughter, but now, working in administration, she seemed to take her lack of fulfillment out on me with relentless jealousy-driven harassment. I'm off now. I would routinely report before leaving the office to visit clients. That day, I had a packed schedule with client appointments, so I quickly finished lunch with coffee at the office before heading out. Bonnie, if you use the hot water from the pot for your coffee, at least refill it before you leave. Elaine chided me.
Sorry, I'm in a rush. Could you top it up for me?
She asked as she came to refill the water boiler, part of her administrative duties. I hadn't used much water, and I made sure to use it before everyone's lunchtime, so there was still plenty left. Honestly, everyone complains that there's always less water after you use it. She griped.
Really? I don't use much, but I'll be more careful.
I replied. With an appointment waiting, I couldn't linger and quickly left the office. During a meeting with a client, an email was sent to all employees from Elaine. It read, "To all staff, for the pleasant use of communal resources, please adhere to the rules." Recently, some inconsiderate employee has been using a lot of the pot's water without refilling it. Although it's just one person, we ask everyone to use the company's resources responsibly. I thought.
This is about me, isn't it?
The email implied it was just one person, so if a witch hunt started at the office, Elaine would surely point fingers at me. Ridiculous. I still remember her poor attitude from my first greeting at the company. She must be really bored to bother with such petty harassment. I had no choice but to get used to her antics. After finishing the day's appointments, I returned to the office to submit my end-of-day report. It was past 7 p.m. Usually, no one is around at the headquarters at this time, but Elaine was still there.
Oh, Elaine, you're still here?
Wow, Bonnie, you were still working? She asked, clearly surprised as I approached.
Sorry to startle you.
Yes, I'm surprised. Were you really working this late, or were you out drinking?
I wasn't drinking. It just got late because I had many places to visit.
What I wanted to ask was why she was still at the office at this hour. But I couldn't say that. After all, being the president's daughter, she had a habit of bullying others by exploiting their weaknesses.
I'm heading home now, Elaine. Don't stay too late yourself.
Just go home already. Sigh, another day drained by unnecessary issues. But something was bothering me. I couldn't help but wonder why Elaine was staying so late, and why she got puzzled as I spoke to her. Bonnie, can I talk to you for a moment? Elaine asked.
What is it?
I replied, it's almost the end of the month, right? I need to check something about the new client acquisitions. She said,
Okay.
I'll be back at the office by 5 p.m. The next day, as I came to the office as usual, what Elaine had mentioned felt unnatural. Why would an admin staff be concerned about the sales department's client numbers? That's typically the responsibility of the sales manager, not admin. The day was packed with appointments again. A company I regularly visit wanted to start a new project and needed staff, so they asked our company for assistance, resulting in another new contract for me. That client is a major call center expanding rapidly, and my strong relationship with their representative means they contact me whenever they need staffing support. Back at the office, after reporting the new contract to my boss, I went to meet Elaine, who had been waiting.
I'm back. You mentioned something about a client this morning. What's up?
I asked.
Bonnie, are you securing these new contracts by forming deep relationships with the clients?
She inquired. What? I was taken aback by her unexpected question. No, of course not. I stammered.
Is that so? Well, if that's the case, then it's fine.
Is that all?
Yes, that's it.
She replied. It felt weird. She waited all this time just to ask me that? While I was out working hard, she seemed to have nothing better to do. I don't feel comfortable about your question. Is something wrong? I asked.
Nothing's wrong.
She said, her expression mocking. Then why ask such a thing?
I find it strange. Someone like you getting so many clients.
She said. To me, it wasn't strange at all. It was due to my effort and expertise. What do you mean by someone like me? I asked.
You don't seem like the sales type. I mean, with my looks and privileged background, I fit the sales role, but you don't, Bonnie.
She implied. Sure, Elaine was attractive and had the president as her parent, seemingly living a charmed life. However, that's not what makes someone good at sales. Are you suggesting that because of my looks, I'm getting clients through personal relationships? I questioned.
I didn't say that directly.
She laughed. Feeling personally attacked, I left the office, passing by the laughing Elaine. I was so upset, I cried all the way home. As the month end approached, it was time to report this month's new client acquisitions and progress. Today was the day for that meeting. I had worked hard this month. With referrals from a major company and new clients met through acquaintances, I had secured 3 contracts, feeling very satisfied with my performance. Some months are dry, but this month, I felt proud of my achievements.
This month I've acquired 3 new clients, bringing my total to 12.
It was my turn to report my performance, so I shared as usual. But then the room started buzzing.
What's going on?
I whispered to my colleague David, sitting next to me. He is a friendly guy I've been close with since we started together, and quietly filled me in.
The documents say something different. What?
I checked my papers and they matched what I had just reported. However, his copy showed my new client count as 0, with a note saying there were issues with my sales acquisition methods under investigation.
What's this? Let's talk about it later. We should continue the meeting.
David advised, so I followed his lead and got through the meeting. I asked him for more details afterwards.
Why were my documents different from everyone else's?
Elaine prepared them, so I'm not sure. At that point, I understood. It was harassment from her.
Elaine prepared them, I see.
I took the documents David had and went to confront Elaine. Elaine, I need to talk to you.
What's up? Don't look so scary.
She said, this document, what is it? It's false, right? This is too much, even for harassment. I found myself raising my voice at her without realizing it. I was that angry. Then she said something shocking.
Bonnie, do you know what happens when you talk to me like that?
What?
You're replaceable. You're fired.
She spat out. I felt myself crumbling, exhaustion washing over me. After a heated argument, I found myself saying, understood. I'll leave, then. The intense argument in the office had made me the talk of the company. Despite contributing so much, why was I facing this? But I had said I would leave. What about my living expenses starting tomorrow? That thought drained all my motivation. Deeply upset, I got a call from David, who was worried about me.
I didn't realize it was that serious, sorry. I couldn't back you up as your colleague.
It's okay. Elaine's harassment has been ongoing since I joined.
Still, the company will take a big hit losing someone with your clientele. Are you really quitting?
His words made me reconsider. But the opponent wasn't just any employee. She was the president's daughter, with considerable influence.
I guess so. I'm confident in my sales record, and I'll do sales at another company. That's all I have.
I see.
But here's a personal piece of advice: don't just quit. If you're leaving anyway, why not pay her back? She's not that great, even if she's the president's daughter.
Hearing that, I thought, maybe he's right. Being a competitive person, I couldn't just leave after all the harassment from Elaine, as he suggested. I thought about what kind of payback I could give during my remaining time before resigning. I also decided to start looking for a new job.
Thanks, David. Your words sparked a great idea. Plus, I'm going to start job hunting.
I told him.
That's good to hear. Personally, I wish you'd stay, but if you're leaving, it might be fun to give Elaine a bit of trouble as a parting gift.
He said.
You might be right.
I mused. After hanging up with David, I dove into my job search and decided to use my remaining paid leave. I had a lot accumulated due to rarely taking time off. I went to Elaine to tell her about my plans. Elaine, thanks for deciding to fire me the other day. She seemed surprised by my attitude, probably expecting me to be depressed.
What's with that attitude?
She asked. Did you think I'd be down?
No, but you're tougher than I thought.
Yes, I am. By the way, I cut her off mid-sentence to tell her I'd be using my accrued leave.
Paid leave? I won't allow it. You should just leave quickly since you're fired.
Is she an idiot? She doesn't even realize the problem with her statement. Do you not know? You can't just fire someone easily, and you can't deny paid leave without a special reason.
Fine, take it then.
She relented easily. It wasn't as satisfying as I hoped, but I planned to use my leave to execute a great idea. Thank you. I'll come back to the office on my last day to say goodbye.
Why bother with that attitude? You don't need to come back.
I looked her in the eyes and gave her a sly smile.
Just wait and see, Elaine. You'll be in for a surprise.
I started to feel a bit excited. I then scheduled appointments to say goodbye to all our clients. I wasn't using my leave to rest, but to execute a plan that would lead to my next move. I decided to use all 30 days of my leave for this purpose and as payback to Elaine. I received regretful responses from many clients. When I explained my resignation to our biggest client, they were indignant.
If you leave, we'll end our dealings with your company and shift our business to wherever you go.
They said. I didn't need to be honest with clients, but I wanted them to stop dealing with my soon-to-be former company. That turned out to be more effective than I imagined, with all clients reacting the same way. I had to admit, it was a brilliant idea. Imagining Elaine's future distress made me feel quite relieved already. One day, while I was using my paid leave, Elaine called my cell phone.
Bonnie, all the clients you were handling are suddenly ending their contracts with us. Did something happen?
I don't know anything about that. I feigned ignorance. She probably didn't imagine I was contacting clients during my leave. She seemed too nonchalant.
It's strange. It's not like they would stop dealing with our company just because you left, right?
Well, I was just a representative. My leaving shouldn't influence our company's contracts that much.
I know that. But it's strange. One after another, they're ending the contracts. Probably due to the recession.
She mused. I almost laughed at how clueless she was. My plan was working. Then, I received a call from a top client. They wanted to discuss a possible headhunting offer. An unexpected development. I decided to meet with them. First, I called David. Since it was his idea that inspired me, I thought I should tell him. Hey, how are you? I'm fine. But I have something to report. What happened? Remember our talk? I came up with a plan. If I'm quitting anyway, why not get back at Elaine? He seemed almost to say, that sounds fun. As he eagerly listened to the story, I explained everything to our clients, and they all said they'd move their contracts to wherever I go next. Bonnie, you're incredible, a real sales pro. I'm grateful, but I feel a bit guilty, yet impressed with myself. Thanks to you, David. Though I knew it complicated things for him, who was still at the company, I vowed to repay his kindness somehow. As I completed informing all clients, I decided to accept the headhunting offer. That company was a major client of my soon-to-be former company, so their contract cancellation was a significant blow. The company that headhunted me was setting up a new subsidiary in staffing and wanted me to handle their sales. With my new job secured, my mission was complete. On my last day, I went to the office to say goodbye. I've appreciated working with you. Elaine seemed off. That's the least of our problems. What happened? Turns out, all the projects I managed were cancelled at the request of the clients. The company was facing issues due to a significant drop in revenue. Dad's so angry with me. What do I do now? She collapsed, crying. What to do? This happened because you decided to fire me, right? I looked down at the crying her and said, I'm being blamed by Dad and the sales director. They're saying it's my fault Bonnie was fired and that I should fix the sales drop. But I can't do that. She was crying like a child, but I was satisfied with the payback I had achieved. Elaine, remember how you said my appearance wasn't right for sales and that I secured deals through personal relationships? Maybe this is karma. I'm sorry for that. I did reflect on it afterward. Reflect? Too late for that. I didn't feel any reflection from you. And that's not all you did to me. Maybe you should try contacting the clients yourself to recover the sales. Though I doubt you can. I can't do sales. She used to be in sales. What is she talking about? Weren't you in sales before? Oh, I see, you were removed because you couldn't do the job? She just sat there, her face a mess with tears, unable to speak. I had nothing more to do there, so I decided to leave. Well, I'll be resigning now, Elaine. Can't you reconsider your resignation? Our company's sales are in trouble. No, thank you. Thus, I left the company I had worked at for years. According to David, after my resignation, Elaine was blamed for the negative impact on sales caused by firing me. That affected the employees' bonuses and led to complaints, resulting in her being forced out of the company. She's been now idle at home. I was enjoying success at the new company that headhunted me. One day, I heard from David that he too had left the company. I explained the situation to my new company and managed to get him hired. We were working together again, striving side by side. It was fun to work with a former colleague, and we were gradually securing contracts with the clients I used to deal with at my previous company. Thanks to it, I won a newcomer award this month and felt very fulfilled. The poor, that suits you right. A line thrown at me instead of a greeting at a family meeting just before my son's wedding. In front of me was a baguette from a high-end French restaurant, laid out on a glass plate. Never did I imagine that I would taste such humiliation from the fiancé of my son, whom I raised all by myself. However, this situation took a turn with the entrance of a man. Consequently, my in-laws ended up losing everything. My name is Sophie. I am a 55-year-old housewife. My husband passed away early, and I raised my son Christopher on my own. This year, he turned 25. He graduated from college and found a job. Now he's working hard as a professional. He is the pride of my life. He, thinking I would be lonely, still lives with me at home. This house, left by my late husband. I guess it's not wrong to want to spend more time with Christopher in this house. However, I was surprised earlier this year when he told me something unexpected. He had a girlfriend and was planning to marry her. First, I was shocked that he had a girlfriend. Introverted and shy, he was always awkward with women. In his student days, he was so puzzled about what to do even when he received chocolates on Valentine's Day. My son, talking about marriage now, made me incredibly happy. You have a girlfriend, and you're thinking of getting married? I'm so happy, I told him. That was my true feeling. I was happy, feeling his growth. Seeing how happy I was, he seemed relieved. I'm glad you're happy, Mom. He said he would bring her home soon. I was excitedly waiting, sure he would bring her quickly. But the opportunity didn't come. I felt bad for rushing him, but I asked him about it. He smiled awkwardly. It's hard to match our schedules. I really want to introduce her to you soon. Apparently, it was hard to bring her due to her schedule. Instead, he shared a little about her. Her name is Rothy. She's 4 years older than Christopher. He choosing an older woman caught me by surprise. It made me a bit worried. I wondered if he was already under her thumb. Really? Does she work? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, she's a tutor. Her parents are teachers too. According to him, Rothy's family, including her brother and sister, are teachers. It seems she was raised in a very strict household. Being a tutor, she must have to adjust to her students' schedules. She must be very dedicated to her work. I'm sorry for rushing things. I'll wait patiently to meet her, I said. Hearing my words, he said with a smile, Thanks, Mom. But fate can be frightening. 2 months had flown by since Christopher said he would introduce her girlfriend, and I was starting to feel like her absence was intentional. Then, by chance, I met Rothy. It happened while I was enjoying lunch with a friend after a long time. The woman seated back to back with me began talking loudly. Her voice was quite loud for a public place, and I felt a slight discomfort. She was complaining to her lunch partner about her upcoming wedding. Meeting the family before the wedding, it's such a hassle, isn't it? Her friend, trying to calm her down, said in a low voice, Don't say that. But the woman's griping didn't stop. Apparently, the man was raised in a single-parent home and holds his mom in high regard. She seemed to dislike that. So, I'm delaying meeting her. I want to see how long Christopher will put up with it. I told him to prove he's not a mama's boy, she said. I almost turned around. She had indeed mentioned Christopher as the man's name. I felt a slight dizziness. I could hear her friend advising, Rothy, you need to be more humble. That confirmed it. The woman talking loudly about her future mother-in-law behind me was Christopher's fiancée, Rothy. My hand holding the coffee cup trembled. I was so disturbed that my friend asked, Are you okay? After that, I ate the recommended dessert, but I can't recall what it was. I just wanted to leave that place as soon as possible. That was my only thought. Rothy, unaware I was there, continued to complain about her fiancé's family. She belittled the single mother family, comparing it to her own educational background. She called me a clinging mother and talked about making Christopher abandon me after the wedding. Hearing all that, fear overcame my anger. The conflict between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law had begun even before the family meeting, before the wedding. Yet, she was the woman Christopher chose. There must be something wonderful about her. Back home, I tried to calm myself by thinking this. I couldn't bring myself to tell Christopher about this incident and bore it alone. Since that chance encounter with Rothy, I stopped urging him about the family meeting. After all, I knew she had no intention of coming. There was no need to invite her. I didn't want to be continually looked down upon by being too accommodating. Christopher seemed a bit suspicious of my change of heart but didn't press further. It's okay if you're busy. Whenever it's convenient for you, I told him. He is innocent in all this. I tried to ease his burden with my words. It seems the wedding plans between Christopher and Rothy were progressing faster than the family meeting. Seeing a wedding venue brochure on the living room table, I realized the countdown to the wedding had begun. I wanted to speak up about the wrong order of things, but I refrained for my son's sake. If I started making a fuss, I'd be accused of being unable to let go or of being a mama's boy, baseless accusations that would upset me. Indeed, Christopher is important to me. But he's an independent adult. I haven't interfered more than necessary. To prove that, I had to remain a tolerant mother. One of these days, there's a family meeting with the parents-in-law. They've reserved a fancy French restaurant, and I'd like you to come, Mom. Christopher suddenly said one morning. He had previously visited Rothy's family, but they wanted to have a formal family meeting. The meeting was scheduled for 2 days later. It was a sudden announcement, and I felt a bit irritated. Shouldn't such things be planned after matching everyone's schedules? Again, I found myself having to hold back.
All right, I haven't formally met Rothy yet, so it's good to meet her sooner,
I said, hiding my irritation. Christopher apologized, saying,
sorry for the sudden plan.
I thought it was Rothy and her family who should be apologizing, not him. I reassured him. It's fine. On the day of the family meeting, Christopher and I went to the designated upscale French restaurant. I was a bit nervous, as it was my first time at such a fancy place. He chuckled.
Feels kind of nerve-wracking, doesn't it?
When we gave our name to the staff, we were guided to a private room. It seemed that Rothy's family was already gathered there. Rothy and her mother, Marcia, were apparently present. Excuse us, I said as I opened the door to the private room. Seated there were Marcia, with a definite teacher vibe, and Rothy with slightly flashy makeup. Her demure dress didn't really match Rothy's makeup. Probably Marcia insisted on her wearing it for the family meeting. It didn't suit her at all. Rothy and Marcia didn't say a word until I finished my greetings. Furthermore, they scrutinized me from head to toe, as if evaluating me. It was as if they had done me a favor by coming to listen to my greetings. I thought, this is the kind of daughter raised by such a mother. Since Christopher knew Marcia, he said, long time no see. Indeed. I've been looking forward to meeting the famous mother. I've never had any connection with single mothers, Marcia said with a laugh. There was a sting in her use of the term single mother. Don't think that my daughter stole your precious son, she said with a refined laugh, saying something rather rude. Perhaps she was not even aware that she was being rude. To her, this must be perfectly normal, not rude at all. I somehow managed to return a polite smile.
He's still inexperienced, but please take care of him,
I said, playing it down. She nodded contentedly, behaving as if she was superior. I thought she must treat her students and their parents the same way. I wouldn't want such a teacher for my child. Please, have a seat. She invited me to sit down. Even at this point, Rothy hadn't greeted me. She just looked at me with disdain. I had to resist the urge to pour the water on the table over her head.
Nice to meet you, Rothy. I'm Christopher's mother.
If we both remained silent, nothing would start. Reluctantly, I initiated the conversation. Then, Rothy snorted in a mocking manner. I know. You just said that. I don't like people who repeat themselves. It's not efficient, she said arrogantly. My forehead vein twitched at her rude remark. Anger welled up inside me. But I couldn't afford to lose my temper here. She was the woman Christopher chose. I feigned calmness.
Oh, I see. I'll keep that in mind,
I replied, forcing a smile. I felt like I was reaching my limit. Her father would be a bit late due to work, Marcia had informed us. She suggested we start without him. Today, Dad is splurging. You have never had such food because you were poor, Rothy said to Christopher with a seemingly innocent smile. He just went along, unfazed. I always knew he was kind and patient, but this was beyond that. I worried a little about whether he could handle society. Was he being taken advantage of? I wondered with a parent's concern.
That's nice. Let's enjoy the feast, Christopher,
I chimed in. Rothy and Marcia wore unpleasant smiles. I couldn't understand why they were making such faces. But soon it became clear. Quietly, the door to the private room opened, and the first dish was brought in. On a beautifully decorated plate was the cuisine. I watched as the dishes were placed on the table one by one. True to a high-end French restaurant. The starters were visually stunning. Then, a plate was gently placed in front of me. I couldn't help but exclaim upon seeing the dish in front of me. It was just a baguette on a glass plate. That was the reason behind Rothy and Marcia's laughter. They seemed intent on mocking me to the fullest. I later learned that the owner of this upscale French restaurant was Marcia's brother. They had colluded to ridicule me. The poor, that suits you best, Rothy said, laughing heartily while looking at my shocked expression. Marcia, not saying a word, covered her mouth with a handkerchief. She was probably hiding a vulgar smile behind it. I couldn't take it anymore. Even Christopher seemed to turn pale at this situation.
Is that so? This suits a poor person like me, does it?
I muttered Rothy's words. I was looking down, trying to contain my anger. Rothy, seeing me bowed, must have thought I was crying. Sophie, crying over the truth isn't logical, she said, laughing even harder. Normally, Marcia would be expected to scold Rothy for such rudeness. But she just said, "Oh dear, Rothy," with no intention of scolding her. I inadvertently let out a sigh. At that moment, the door opened, and Rothy's father entered.
Sorry for being late.
The father, who entered apologizing for his lateness, looked back and forth between Rothy, laughing heartily, and me, bowed down. He then caught sight of the baguette in front of me and gasped. He seemed unable to comprehend the situation.
What's this about?
He asked Rothy, sounding a bit panicked. She proudly explained the situation. Dad, this is Christopher's mother, raised in poverty. I thought she wouldn't have experienced a fancy French restaurant's baguette, so I had it specially prepared, she said. He scolded her, saying,
What are you talking about? That's taking the joke too far.
But he couldn't hide his amusement. Deep down, he must have been mocking us too. The idea of such parents and their daughter becoming my family was unbearable. I slowly raised my bowed head. At that moment, his eyes widened in sheer surprise. His face turned pale very quickly. Cedric, long time no see. I never expected Rothy to be your daughter, I said, somewhat surprised myself, because I knew him. Principal, he exclaimed in shock. I have been the principal of a private high school for 3 years. When a close friend's father passed away, he bequeathed this role to me. I was entrusted with the legacy of bringing new winds to the school. Reforming the school was no easy task, but I had the determination and perseverance from raising Christopher alone. I slowly but surely adjusted customs and brought fresh ideas. The teacher who was always harsh on me was Cedric, Rothy's father. This insult from your daughter, I will never forget. Instead of loudly talking about the school's educational policies, maybe you should pay more attention to education at home, I said, staring down him. He had always berated me. A single mother can't be a principal, he had often said. He even spread rumors that I couldn't properly educate my own child. Hey, what does that mean? Sophie is Dad's boss? Seeing Cedric turn pale, Rothy seemed to realize the magnitude of what she had done. Marcia was trembling, lost for words. I looked at each member of Rothy's family and slowly bit into the baguette. The sound of me crunching the baguette echoed in the room. Delicious, as expected of a high-end French restaurant's baguette. How about it, Cedric? I offered, smiling, as I held out the glass plate with the baguette. His hand trembled amusingly as he took it. Don't get the wrong idea. I always separate work and personal life. Your dismissal has always been a topic at the board meetings. I was the one opposing it. After all, without a rival, there's no momentum for reform. But your role ends here. That was a final warning for him. In fact, I had evidence of his accepting bribes from parents during admissions, manipulating interviews. He was enjoying a luxurious life with that money, dining at upscale French restaurants and driving luxury cars. I was still deciding whether to pursue criminal charges. If he left the school quietly, I was willing to let it go.
Christopher, let's go home. She may be this kind of lady, but can you still see her as a marriage partner? I won't stop you if you choose her.
I said to Christopher, whose gaze was fixed on the baguette Cedric held. To him, Rothy, with a strained smile, whispered,
"You'll marry me, right?"
Thinking marrying him was her only way to save Cedric's position. Her pleading eyes turned to him. He looked down, gripping his hands on his knees.
"The engagement is off. This marriage is as if it never happened,"
he declared.
"It's just a joke. I didn't mean to mock you. It's a joke, Christopher, you're so stiff."
Rothy desperately tried to cover up. If that wasn't mockery, then what was? I was amazed she couldn't come up with a better excuse. He looked at Rothy with an unexpectedly cold gaze.
"Rothy, you've been given a lot by your parents. Education and love. But I believe I received even more from my mom. Seeing her work was cool. She's still cool."
He declared he could never forgive her for mocking me. He expressed pity for the students she was teaching. I wouldn't want to be taught by someone like her.
"I heard bad rumors about you, but chose to believe otherwise. You betrayed that trust,"
he said, causing tears to stream down Rothy's face. She seemed to finally understand the irreversible damage done.
Wait. You're joking about the breakup, right? I bragged about getting married to my friends. I can't break it off, it's embarrassing,"
she pleaded tearfully.
"What's most necessary for you now is to reflect on how things came to this. We probably won't see each other again, but I hope you grow."
As Christopher and I were about to leave the private room, Cedric grabbed his shoulder to stop him. Christopher shook off his hand as if it were something filthy.
"I've been patient, but let me say this clearly. What's wrong with being raised by a single mother? Did you see Rothy's vulgar behavior, raised by respectable parents? You should be more ashamed,"
he said firmly. Cedric had no response and looked down in shame. Rothy's cries echoed in the private room as we left the restaurant. The moment we stepped outside the restaurant, we heard Cedric's angry voice. He was probably yelling at Rothy.
"Christopher, you need to be more discerning in choosing women."
When I said that, he scratched his head and said,
"It's embarrassing."
Apparently, Rothy had aggressively pursued him. He tends to be easily swayed. Rothy probably saw that in him.
"Anyway, it's good everything came out before the marriage,"
I said, feeling relieved as we went home. The engagement was annulled. Rothy demanded compensation, but Christopher dismissed it. He explained logically to his lawyer that Rothy was entirely to blame for the broken engagement. The compensation demand was dropped. When threatened with a lawsuit, she backed down quickly. Her parents must have told her not to make things worse. Though I keep work and personal life separate, Cedric had to leave the school. The bribery issued during admissions was about to become public. Faced with leaving quietly or going to court, he chose the former. An expected choice. Now unemployed, he's desperately seeking a new job. But bad rumors spread fast in the same industry. It's unlikely many schools would hire a teacher with such a reputation. He's at a difficult crossroads, deciding whether to continue teaching or find a new job. Rothy resigned from her tutoring job. Having bragged about getting married, the broken engagement left her too embarrassed to face her colleagues and students. I heard she couldn't stand to teach towards the end due to stress. Currently, she is reportedly confined to a room in her parents' house, not even seeking a new job. I heard from the lawyer that she is too embarrassed to even walk around the neighborhood. While I feel a bit sorry for her, it's her responsibility. Marcia, burdened with 2 unemployed adults, is reportedly preparing for divorce. If she couldn't live as luxuriously as before, she wanted to use her earnings solely for herself, which was her reason for divorce. Logical, perhaps, but abandoning one's family for such a reason? Ultimately, Rothy's attitude and actions led to the family's downfall. All I can do is hope that she, having lost everything, will recover on her own. Today, sometime after the incident, I felt genuinely happy for the first time in a while. Christopher introduced me to a wonderful woman. The woman he introduced to me is a single mother working at the same place as him. She has a daughter who is about to turn 3. It seems she was the one who lifted Christopher's spirits after his broken engagement with Rothy. She was very bright and sunny. Her daughter is also fond of Christopher. It looks like I might even become a grandmother. Despite the roundabout journey, I'm slightly relieved that Christopher seems to be on his way to building a happy family.
Oh, I really thought Mom had a ton of money saved up.
I told you, didn't I? Kick her out already. What's the point of letting the jobless parasite stay here?
I've been living here for 3 months, and my son and his wife drained my savings. They treated me like a maid. I was done with it all, so I left quietly. Just then, my son called me. Mom, what's going on? Tony sounded frantic on the phone. Around that time, something I did had become headline news across the United States. I'm Sarah, and I am 70 years old. I'd been living in France for several years, but my health took a turn for the worse, so I came back to the States. My old apartment was gone, so I reached out to my son and his wife to see if I could stay with them for a while. Tony, my only son, is 44 and works as an office employee. He and his wife Alice don't have kids, and they seem to live quietly. We lost touch while I was away, but I decided to reconnect, and Tony seemed glad to hear from me. I explained my situation and asked if I could stay for a while. Tony reluctantly agreed. It was awkward to impose on them, but the joy of seeing my family again overcame my hesitations. With a mix of nervousness and happiness, I took a taxi from the airport to their house. When I arrived, Tony and Alice greeted me at the entrance. While Tony looked happy, Alice was visibly unhappy. I plan to stay here for a few months. My belongings will be delivered later. I dropped off my carry-on bag and went to the living room. We chatted about our daily lives and jobs, as well as my recent life in France. When Tony asked why I'd moved to France, I just said, I'm getting old and wanted to enjoy the French countryside. Tony laughed, but Alice remained unhappy. Then we discussed my health issues. I've been having severe dizziness and was told it might be Meniere's disease. When a seizure occurs, people may be unable to stand because their surroundings are spinning and they may feel nauseous. I feel insecure living alone, so I wanted to stay with them until my condition stabilizes. After our conversation, I went back to the entrance to grab my belongings from my carry-on. As I was organizing my stuff in the hallway, I overheard Tony and Alice's conversation.
Tony, are you serious about letting Sarah stay? I don't want to live with an old woman.
Come on, she's my mom. You also work part-time, so it's not like you'll always be around.
Yeah, but what about our days off? How long is she planning to stay? I want her gone.
Don't talk like that. Mom will eventually leave. We can discuss finances tomorrow. Just keep it down. She might hear you.
She can't hear us. She's old.
Age brings sharp ears for insults. And there I was, eavesdropping on their conversation in the cold hallway. I feel bad for imposing on Tony and his wife so suddenly. I'm sure it's a big inconvenience for them. But you know, I'm really happy to be spending time with Tony and his wife after all these years apart. When Tony was young, I raised him as a single mom after losing my husband. We didn't have much, and Tony had his share of hardships, dealing with illness and all. This isn't making up for that, but I wanted to come here to share my apologies and gratitude. That's why I came to this house. It's a shame I'm not welcome, but they've got their own lives to live. I went to the guest room they gave me, trying to settle my anxious heart. Next morning, Tony left for work, and it was just Alice and me. While I was doing some crafting on the living room sofa, Alice stood before me.
Hey, Sarah, can you not make such a mess?
Looking around, I noticed fabric scraps and threads scattered about. Oh, I'm sorry. I cleaned it up. Do you know what this is? I showed her the small pouch I was sewing. I had a little green turtle design on it. This is a turtle pouch. I love turtles, so I make little turtle-themed crafts. It even has a zipper on its shell, too.
That's nice. But Sarah, you can just hang around here all day.
Alice cut me off, clearly uninterested, and sighed heavily.
At least go somewhere else when I'm off from my part-time job. You're in the way.
But I get dizzy if I go outside too much.
I'll drive you to the nearby community center, so stay there during the day. I have things to do at home.
Alice said without room for discussion and continued.
Also, help with the chores while you're here. You're not bedridden. It's the least you can do since we're letting you stay. Don't do crafts, do some cleaning and laundry.
Stunned, I finally said, "All right then," and slowly got up. From then on, I ended up doing all the housework. Though dizzy and sore, I took on the chores. Alice and Tony treated me like a housekeeper. Alice seemed addicted to social media, constantly on her phone. It looked like she hadn't been keeping up with the housework before I came. That night, "Mom, did you bring your banking card?" When Tony got home, he talked to me with a smile. "I don't mind you living with us, but life costs money. Could you chip in?" I looked at Tony over my reading glasses, nodded, and stood up. I pulled the banking card from my handmade pouch and handed it to Tony. He checked it quickly and his face tightened. "Wait, Mom, is this all you have saved? Any other accounts?" "That's all I have. I don't need much at my age. No chronic illnesses or anything," I said, smiling. As the conversation continued, Tony's expression darkened. "Man, this is not enough money. Not even 10,000? You said you were living large abroad, so I assumed." Tony kept pestering me, asking if I had any more money. When I said no, he sighed and slumped his shoulders. "Fine. I'll hang on to this cash for now. I'm doing you a favor letting you live here, so this is the least you could do." After getting my account password, Tony grabbed my bank and debit cards and left the room. That night, lying in bed, I could hear Tony thudding through the wall that separated our rooms. "Oh, this is a letdown. I totally thought Mom was loaded. Our household is actually in the red. Shouldn't have said she could stay."
See, I told you. Kick her out already. That jobless moocher brings us no benefits whatsoever.
The two of them seemed confident I couldn't hear, talking freely in the next room, or maybe they wanted me to hear them. In my cold bed, I was holding back tears of loneliness and sorrow. The next day, since Alice had a day off, she drove me to the local community center. I opened my cargo bag to continue my handiwork in the lounge area, but realized I had left the essential fabric at home. I hesitated, but I couldn't ask Alice to go back and get it. Fortunately, my dizziness was under control today. I knew this area, so I decided to take a walk home to get the fabric. Finally arriving, I glanced through the veranda into the house. Alice and an unfamiliar man were there. At first, I thought he was a visitor, but they seemed intimately close. I hesitated outside for a while, then turned back without entering the house. So that's why they wanted me out. so I wouldn't interrupt the affair. Back at the community center, I kept thinking about Alice and that man and decided to call someone for advice. From then on, I avoided bringing up the man and continued interacting with Tony and his wife. However, whenever I left the house, I would conspicuously place a red turtle pouch at the edge of the living room side table. 3 months had passed since I started staying with Tony's family. By this point, I had essentially become the household's maid. When I was at home, I had to do endless chores, and when Alice was home, I was relegated to the community center. My savings had mostly been drained by Tony, a man with a gambling addiction who spent most of his free time on lotteries and slots. It seemed his fixation on money stemmed from the financial hardships he suffered as a child. I initially tried to intervene, but eventually gave up since mentioning it always enraged him. 3 months in, and I couldn't take it anymore. One night, before a long weekend, I decided to bring up something I'd been considering. "Tony, Alice, thank you for letting me stay with you. Tony, I know I made things hard for you when you were young by not having much money. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, but I'm grateful." I pulled out a homemade turtle pouch from the table. It was green with a zipper on the shell. "This is a token of my gratitude to both of you. I hope you'll accept it." Contrary to my expectations, neither Tony nor Alice showed any interest in my handmade pouch.
"Mom, enough of that. Are we really out of money? Think about the French account or something."
"Tony, I told you, we're out of money. Look, I work really hard on this. Can't you just take it as a token of my love? Remember how happy you were when you were little, and I would fill the shell with candy and some pocket money." Tony starts to get increasingly irritated.
"I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not happy receiving something like this."
Sarah, how much longer are you planning to mooch off us? Honestly, it's annoying.
Tony and his wife give me a cold look. Desperate, I ask Tony, "Do you remember Joe? He helped us out in that old apartment we lived in."
"What? I don't remember. Stop bringing up old stories. Are we done?"
Stunned into silence, I clench the turtle pouch in my hand and feel the texture of the paper inside. The next day, Tony and his wife go on a vacation, leaving me behind. I had planned to leave the house after yesterday's conversation, so I quickly packed my bags with the arranged carrier and sent them off to my home in France. I also don't forget to put the red turtle pouch into my carry-on bag. I leave a simple note of thanks and goodbye on the table and left the house where I had been staying for 3 months. After that, I didn't return home immediately. Instead, I stayed in a U.S. hotel for a while. I had things to do, and I thought Tony and his wife would contact me eventually. Sure enough, about 2 weeks later, Tony calls.
"Mom, what's going on? The turtle pouch. It's yours, isn't it?"
From his words, Tony screams over the phone.
"Ah, you noticed."
I wasn't surprised when I saw the news on the TV. The turtle-shaped pouch I had planned to give to Tony and his wife. Inside it was a check for $1 million. It was my way of saying thanks for all they've done and to apologize for all the trouble I caused as a kid. People might find it shallow to atone with money, but I had dreamt of the day I could give it to them, saving up bit by bit over 40 years. I did some digging before meeting Tony after a long time and found out he was in debt. He had tried to pay off gambling debts with more gambling, only to find himself sinking deeper. He had a steady job, I just wanted him to clear his debts and leave peacefully. But they refused to accept my gesture. They'd completely forgotten about the kindness they had shown to my family and me. So I decided to divide that $1 million check into smaller sums and donate it to charities and welfare organizations across America. I placed the donations in that handmade turtle pouch and sent it anonymously. The turtle pouch became a sensation, making headlines and trending on social media. Alice saw it on social media.
Isn't that the turtle pouch Mom made? So that means you were going to give us one filled with money too? Yes, exactly. That was my way of saying thank you and I'm sorry. I've been crafting both the pouch and saving the money to give to you. Well, you could have said that. We would have taken it.
If you didn't want my feelings, then you don't need my money either. Tony was yelling on the phone, completely unhinged.
It's my money. How dare you deceive me? Give it back.
I couldn't listen anymore and pulled the phone away from my ear. After a moment, I spoke. All right, calm down. You're giving me a headache. There's one more turtle, and if you really want it, it's yours. Tony finally settled down and reiterated his desire for the turtle. We agreed to meet later at a cafe. On that day, I took the last red turtle and an envelope to our meeting spot. Tony and his wife were already there and demanded the money before I even sat down. When I silently pulled out the red turtle, Tony snatched it, immediately unzipping its shell. Inside was not a check, but a small electronic device.
What the heck is this?
Confused, Tony fiddled with the device. He found a tiny button and pressed it. A voice began to play, and Alice, standing next to Tony, immediately changed color. Sitting next to Tony, Alice's expression changed when she heard the voice recording. It was Alice's voice, talking warmly with another man that wasn't Tony.
What is this? Why? What's happening?
Alice seemed to finally realize that it was a recording of her having an affair at home. She tried to snatch the recorder from Tony's hand, but Tony didn't let go. While they grappled, I opened the envelope I'd brought and laid out several pictures on the table. Photos of Alice cheating with another man at home, presented with irrefutable evidence. Alice was flustered and kept muttering.
Why? Why?
Tony picked up the photos one by one, examining them intently. Since I came to your house, something seemed off. A friend told me I could hire someone to find out, and even offered to cover the costs.
What's your problem? Why would you do this?
Well, you're my son's wife. It's sad to think family is deceiving each other. You'll understand when you're older. I guess fate brought me here to discover your infidelity.
Alice, have you been lying to me all along? Since when?
Tony, you've got your own secrets too. If you're blaming her for cheating, you need to fess up as well.
What? I've never cheated.
What about your debt? Tony fell silent, and now it was Alice's turn to speak.
What about you? Wasting all your money on gambling?
I only use the money I earn, and you have your part-time job, so you should have some money.
Listening to their squabble, I sighed. This couple had somehow managed to keep it together until now. Neither of you has any money. Tony, you're $40,000 in debt. Alice, you've been giving all your earnings to your affair partner. I had the investigator check your finances too. Both Tony and Alice were shocked, and they began shouting at each other. I was floored when I first heard the investigation results. This couple was on the brink of bankruptcy.
Look, we can pay back the debt if we get Mom's money, so give it to us now.
I donated all the money. The only thing left is this red turtle figurine. He blew through my savings on gambling, remember?
What? You're kidding me? All of it?
Enraged, Tony lunged at me across the table. Other customers started to pay attention, and the staff hurried over.
The 1 million is mine. It was supposed to be mine. Give it back.
Soon, the police had to be called to restrain Tony. After the police talked some sense into him, they kindly escorted me back to my hotel due to my concerns about Tony's aggressive behavior. A week later, Tony and Alice's relationship had deteriorated beyond repair due to the affair and debt. They got divorced. Tony, now single, got even more consumed with gambling, accruing more debt. He was caught trying to embezzle company funds. He avoided criminal charges but was fired. To make matters worse, his outburst at the cafe was captured on video and spread on social media, making it difficult for him to find another job. Unable to bear the shame, Tony cut off all contact and disappeared. After the divorce, Alice had no one to rely on and moved into an old public housing unit, living alone. Just before I could make a donation for the turtle rescue, it appears my online post mocking my own turtle went viral. Alice started facing harassment and stalking, which eventually spread to her part-time job and got her fired. Even the man she was having an affair with grew tired of her and left. Now, without any income, she's living on temporary assistance for needy families. After that, I returned to my home in France. Once I finished unpacking in my apartment, I changed into a dress with practice ease. As I was reviewing some work documents, I heard a noise at the entrance. It seemed Joe, my cohabitant, had returned home.
Hey, Madam President, welcome back. How was your trip to America after so long?
Joe came over with a smile, setting down his coat and bags. Joe is 75 years old. He was a resident in the same apartment complex where my son Tony and I lived years ago. Back then, I was struggling with poverty, having lost my husband and caring for a young, asthmatic Tony. We had no utilities and with no one to turn to. I was desperate and considered ending it all. It was Joe and his wife, our upstairs neighbors, who saved us. They were our lifelines. Please call me Sarah. I'm back and look, I brought so many souvenirs.
Wow, all my favorites, thanks. I'll take some to the storytelling event at the community center tomorrow.
Joe examined each of the piled-up souvenirs on the table, his face beaming. After we had gotten back on our feet, Joe and his wife moved away for work. Years later, we bumped into each other in the city, and I began helping with a support program for the needy that Joe had founded. Joe's wife had passed away by then, and we started working together as a business and life partners. I've been leading the organization since Joe retired a few years ago. What started as a small operation by Joe and Mia has grown into a large-scale international organization over the past 30 years. Currently, we're focusing on supporting single mothers in raising. We moved to France a few years ago to study their advanced support systems. Although we become quite known in France, we're still not widely recognized in America. I plan to expand our activities there soon and wanted to spend time with Tony and his family as just a mom before they found out about my work. In the end, I couldn't get them to understand how I felt. But that's their choice. Even if it was for a brief moment, I was happy to spend time as a family. I am now 70 years old, but it's just 70. There's still much I want and need to do. I straightened my back in my dress and began thinking about my international speech for tomorrow.
Poor thing. Let me disinfect that poverty smell for you. That's what the leader of the local mom group said as she poured hot cream stew over me. I was already uncomfortable being forced to attend their New Year's party, and now this? I couldn't stay silent any longer. From now on, I'm cutting off all dealings with you. I finally spoke up about everything I had been silently enduring. Then the leader of the mom group began to deeply apologize, but her tragedy was far from over. I am Olivia, 37 years old, a working mom raising a 7-year-old son. My husband passed away shortly after we got married, so now I'm back at my parents' house, getting their help but still supporting my son as a single mother. There are neighbors who don't think well of me. One of them is Victoria. She and I are the same age, and I had hoped we could be friends. But Victoria fully displayed her intense personality. She looked down on me, a widow, as if she was more successful. I met Victoria soon after I returned to my parents' home. Good morning. Oh, a new face. Who are you? I met Victoria, chatting brightly with the other moms while taking out the trash in the morning. Just as the rumor said, Victoria exuded the aura of wealth. I'm rather introverted and plain, so I felt intimidated in her presence. Just as I thought Victoria, who approached me so friendly, was a nice person, she quickly showed her true colors. You're my age? Really? You don't look it. Is that so? Yes, you're dressed so plainly, your hair is unkempt. You look poor. Why don't you dress up more? That's why your husband left you, right? Victoria said this in a mocking tone. I told her that my husband had passed away and that I couldn't dress up because I had work. Then Victoria, hearing this, widened her eyes and burst into loud laughter. Really? Poor you. Wait, you work? Is that why you seem so desperate? I couldn't live if I ended up like that. Hearing her words, huh? I couldn't help but let out a small... It seems Victoria didn't miss that. She immediately glared at me, speaking down to me in a harsh tone. What? You got a problem? It's the truth, right? You're a loser in life. You must be so envious of a successful person like me. Hearing her words, I immediately thought I didn't want to associate with her anymore. Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm in a hurry. What's so funny? Laughing when you're being made fun of? That's creepy. So you admit you're a loser? Pathetic. Victoria continued to provoke me, and I left the scene, unable to hide my irritation. Behind me, she got mad. I could hear Victoria's voice saying, "What an unpleasant person." That was my first impression of her. The next time I saw her was on the day of my son's class observation. My son had left our hometown and was taking his first steps in a new land, with new friends. As a worrier, I always wondered if he was being bullied or if he had friends. But seeing him mingle and have fun with his classmates at school was a relief. That's why I never missed his class observations. Victoria also seemed to always participate in school events, so I inevitably saw her there. But since I avoided her as much as possible, there was no harm. By then, I had made what you could call mom friends. All of us were working moms, and we regularly held mom friends meetings. None of them were spiteful like Victoria. Everyone respected each other, making it a comfortable place. Today, one of these mom friends invited me to a New Year's party. I immediately agreed to join and was excited about what dish to bring. Then, Victoria, hearing about it somehow, appeared with her entourage. Still wearing plain clothes? Why don't you dress up for a change? My husband recently secured a deal with a big corporation, so we have more money than we need. But Olivia, you still look so poor. Victoria said this right away, looking at me without restraint. The mom friends around me also seemed uncomfortable with Victoria, all of them making sour faces. By the way, are you having a New Year's party? I'll join too. Victoria, having overheard, said this as she leaned in. Honestly, we didn't want her to come, but we hesitated to say it to her face. Sensing our subtle discomfort, Victoria approached us with an irritated look. What? Is there a problem with me joining? I'm trying to reach out to you poor people, and you can't stop that annoying attitude? The New Year's party date isn't set yet, so... So you're just making up excuses to exclude me? How terrible. Is this the kind of harassment towards mom friends I often read about on social media? Aren't you embarrassed to do this in front of your children? Victoria's loud complaints made other parents at the school frown. Seeing the parents whispering to each other because of Victoria's loud accusations against us, I felt as if we were the bad ones. Alright, fine. I didn't understand why Victoria wanted to be involved with us, but after her comments, we couldn't refuse. Reluctantly agreeing, Victoria's face lit up innocently with joy. We dispersed that day with gloomy expressions. Then, on the day of the New Year's party, Victoria ended up taking charge of the event. Originally, it was supposed to be at someone else's house, but Victoria insisted. My house is bigger. So it was held at her place. We arrived at Victoria's house with a sense of dread. Entering through the grand gate, the marble-floored entrance and the opposing staircase to the second floor overwhelmed us, making us feel like we were in a rich foreigner's house. Victoria, seeing us speechless, smiled delightedly. Her entourage was already there, surrounding her. Overwhelmed? Well, I guess it's expected of poor people. There's a pool in the garden, visible from the living room window. I often host barbecues there with celebrities. All thanks to my husband being a young CEO. This is the life of the successful, she said cheerfully, leading us to the living room. The interior was stylish, like a model room. Just as Victoria said, the pool was visible from the living room window. You losers will never be able to afford a house like this in your lifetime. Victoria, in high spirits, asked me to help bring a pot from the next room where her husband was. Her husband, named John, greeted us with a nod and a refreshing smile. After placing the pot on the stove, he quickly went to the kids' room in the back. For the kids, since the pot was dangerous, apparently steaks were being prepared. Isn't he wonderful, handsome, and a great earner? A perfect husband for me. You must be drooling with envy, aren't you? Victoria whispered this, seemingly hiding her true self from her husband. She brought another pot and appeared beside me. I moved my chair a bit to make room for her to place the pot. Then, with a sarcastic smile, Victoria leaned in close to me. Let me disinfect that poverty smell for you. Before I could react, I felt my clothes getting wet. Caught off guard, I was stunned as the other mom friends screamed. By the time I realized what happened, it was too late. Fortunately, I was wearing pants and a shirt, so I could take off my top. Victoria laughed at me. Oops, the cream stew was too heavy and I slipped. What a waste. Amid Victoria and her entourage's light laughter, the other mom friends defended me, saying how could she do such a thing? My thighs were scalded by the hot stew, and I couldn't take off my pants. Victoria's mocking smile haunted my view. It's your fault for being there, and don't forget, you tried to exclude me. I was so angry, I decided to embarrass you right here. A huge success. At those words, my anger peaked, and the stares from the other mom friends turned sharp. Being forced to attend this New Year's party of the mom friends was already unpleasant enough, but I couldn't stay silent after what had just happened. I took a breath to compose myself, then turned to Victoria to make my feelings clear. Alright then, from now on, I'm cutting off all dealings with you. Huh? Victoria looked puzzled at my words, and I responded with a smile. It was what you might call a professional sales smile. What are you talking about? Did the hot cream stew scramble your brains? Victoria's usual mocking tone didn't faze me. I switched to my business mode, and spoke to her politely. I've kept quiet until now, but I'm actually the president of a certain company. You mentioned yesterday, didn't you? About completing a deal with John's company? That's my company. Hearing this, Victoria's face darkened for a moment as she looked at me. Are you serious? If this is a lie, you'll regret it. I promptly took out a business card and handed it to Victoria. She looked even more troubled, as if she was looking at something ominous. Do you believe me now? I gave a similar card to John, so he should have it. What do you mean? You're not just some poor single mother? Victoria's hysterical voice drew John's attention. He peeked out, surprised at the commotion, and quickly brought me a towel. Seeing my face, "Ah!" he exclaimed. Victoria, seeing his reaction, turned pale as she stared at me. "Thank you for the hospitality the other day. I'm Olivia." As I said this, John immediately became apologetic and flustered. Seeing him like that, Victoria momentarily looked panicked, then quickly started making excuses. "You see, I accidentally spilled the cream stew on her. It was a bit heavy and, one of my close mom friends. She did it on purpose," then interjected loudly. Victoria glared at them, but John, surprised, "What?" made her jump. "What's going on here?" "It's not on purpose. Stop making false accusations." Victoria's followers, trying to defend her, pleaded with me. However, I had no intention of covering for her and shook my head. "Victoria, didn't you just say you were disinfecting the poverty smell or something?" My words drained the color from Victoria's face. John heard this and glared at her sideways. "You! What have you done? She's an important business partner of mine, and doing something like this to someone... Have you always been causing trouble like this?" John's intensity startled Victoria. I had no intention of helping her. Victoria then bit her back teeth in frustration and defiance. "Where's the proof? You're just trying to frame me. It's all your fault. You've been excluding me and avoiding me. I was just uncomfortable with that." Victoria pointed at the mom friends behind me as she raised her voice. Her usual prickly attitude and behavior had led to this, but she seemed oblivious. "It's because you always judge and mock these working moms, calling them poor. You're reaping what you sowed." I said this in a calm tone, and Victoria gnashed her words even more. "I only told the truth, especially you, Olivia. Seeing you, a single mother, working so desperately was just painful. And your 'I'm trying so hard' attitude made me angry." Victoria lost her composure and lashed out at me. She was so frantic that she couldn't even hide her true nature in front of her husband. I glanced sideways at Victoria and directed a cold gaze at John. "It seems that's the way it is. I no longer wish to be involved with this house in any way. Therefore, I am considering stopping all dealings with you. Your company is not at fault, but I've never felt so unpleasant before." At my words, John's face turned pale, his mouth agape, and then he glared at Victoria with eyes wide in shock. "The major connection I finally managed to secure. Do you realize what you've done? Because of your outrageous behavior, we might lose this lifestyle." John said this, glaring at Victoria again before hurriedly apologizing to me. "I'm terribly sorry for my foolish wife's behavior. Please show us mercy. If we lose the deal with your company, our future business plans and even our employees' livelihoods might be at risk. Please, President, give me another chance. I promise I will deliver results." John's desperate plea almost moved me. He wasn't at fault. But Victoria, interrupting his words, stepped on another landmine. "Stop it. Apologizing to such a plain woman is ridiculous. It's fine, isn't it? It's their loss if the contract is cut. Your company is already well established, and we don't need to work with such a haughty president." Her words only irritated me more. She continued to belittle me, clearly unwilling to acknowledge me. "You all act all so high and mighty, but working while raising children is a loser's game." Victoria's blunt statement earned scornful looks from the gathered mom friends. "Shut up! How much more disrespectful can you be? I never thought you were this kind of woman. Was the usual Victoria all an act? Have you been deceiving me all this time? If you don't change, I might have to consider our son's future and make decisions for his sake." John's words turned Victoria meek as she looked at him. "Divorce! If that's your true nature, it's harmful for our son." That... Victoria stammered, pale-faced and stunned. John looked at her coldly. "I've been suspecting the recent company expenses were odd. You've been indulging in luxuries with the company's money, haven't you? I gathered evidence easily upon a little investigation. I always believed you were kind-hearted, but now it all makes sense. We need to have a serious discussion about everything." At John's words, Victoria collapsed to her knees. Glancing at her, John returned to the children's room. From there, I heard his voice informing the kids about the cancellation. Victoria, left alone, turned to me and dropped to the floor, pleading, "Olivia, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Please continue the deal with John's company. We're mom friends, right? If you support me, John might reconsider. Please. And ask him to reconsider a relationship too." Victoria begged, "Please, please," in a feeble voice. I sighed and coldly gave her my final word. "I don't care about your marital problems. I'll take the business matter under consideration. If you've been using John's company's money without permission, that's embezzlement, a serious crime. Face your actions and pay for your crimes." At my words, Victoria looked despondent and then silently began to cry. Leaving her behind, I and the other mom friends went to pick up our children. The kids looked disappointed, so we decided to go to a new place. Afterwards, Victoria divorced John. During the divorce, she was sued for embezzlement and had to pay back everything. Now, she's living somewhere with that debt. Her followers also got a good scolding from their husbands after returning home. It seems they were close with Victoria's family, so the husbands heard about everything. Though they weren't divorced, their households turned cold. Since then, my bond with the mom friends deepened, and we started to form family connections. Initially, I was anxious about meeting someone like Victoria in a new place, but I'm happy to have found my place here.
Get away from me, you stinky, dirty vagrant! My name is Beverly. 5 years ago, I divorced and have been raising my daughter Nicole as a single mom ever since. Despite showing her love, she never treated me as a mother should be treated. Nicole started denying my very existence 2 years ago when she hit 7th grade. It's incredibly painful, but I knew why it happened. After the divorce, I had to earn a living, so I started working as a janitor for restrooms, and that's what I do to this day. I guess my job didn't sit well with Nicole, especially during her teenage years. She was a good kid up until 6th grade, but once she entered 7th grade and started hanging out with the wrong crowd, her behavior started to change. "Get up, it's time for school." "What? You stink. Stop talking." She'd keep sleeping and be late for school if I didn't wake her up. No matter how much time passed, she never showed any signs of wanting to improve her attitude. She'd stay up late playing video games and never study. It was infuriating. I can't count how many times I've wanted to discipline her for not listening and being so cheeky. At school, she's a terror too, stealing classmates' belongings and throwing out hurtful words. I spent days apologizing to teachers at school for her actions. I was starting to fear she wouldn't make it to any high school, but surprisingly, her attitude changed one day after she started 9th grade. According to a friend's mom, one of the kids Nicole was hanging out with got caught stealing and was arrested. The arrest could jeopardize their future and reputation, which probably scared Nicole into mending her ways. She stopped hanging out with that friend and started getting serious. She still had an attitude, but something was different. "Unlike you, who's not going to college and doing dirty work, I'm going to go to a good college and have a happy marriage." That last sentence pierced through me. I felt all the blood in my body drain away. I never once thought of my life as hard. I was actually happy raising Nicole all by myself. It turns out the term divorce had translated into unhappiness in Nicole's mind. I wanted to make Nicole take back what she said, but I knew it would be futile at this point. I quietly left the room, thinking it was my role as a family member to silently support her now that she showed motivation to study. If it's for my daughter's better future, I can endure any unpleasant words she throws at me. As exam days approached, I tried my best to tread lightly around Nicole, to sugarcoat things, so to speak, but the stress of studying seemed to pile on, making her more irritable. To vent, I'd talk to my coworkers. Everyone listened with a sympathetic ear, and it felt good to know I wasn't alone. Fast forward 2 months, and Nicole got accepted into her dream school. It's a private high school, so from enrollment fees to tuition, the costs are sky high. But I thought, I'll just work more to cover it. Congratulations, I'm so happy for you. It's a no-brainer. Her response was cold, but seeing Nicole smile that day warmed my heart. Exams are also a rite of passage for her, after all. The next day, I immediately asked for more shifts at work. The catch was, I now often had to work until just before dinner time, leaving me less time to cook. I began to buy pre-made dishes and reuse leftovers, and this didn't sit well with Nicole. I ate this yesterday. How dare you make a private high school student like me eat this crap? What are you thinking? With that, she knocked the dishes onto the floor. The dishes didn't break, but the food splattered everywhere. I sighed, earning a glare from Nicole. What's with that sigh? How dare you think of making me eat this? I'm not some person who eats leftovers. You call yourself a parent? Don't mess with me, you old hag. Clearly, cutting corners wasn't an option. Maybe I'd let my guard down. From the next day, I started prepping meals before leaving for work, even sacrificing sleep. Some nights I had to take extra shifts after Nicole went to bed. I was constantly exhausted, but I worked as hard as I could for her sake. I had hoped that once she became a high school student, her words would soften. But instead, they only got worse, weighing heavily on my already tired body. Contrary to my slight hope for kind words, Nicole's language only deteriorated. It might have been the stress of being around peers from affluent families that made Nicole more unbearable. Ah, Nicole used to be so sweet and adorable when she was younger. When I was alone, I found myself sighing and talking to myself. The only saving grace was knowing that Nicole was still growing up. As an adult, I always believed my daughter would mature and start to think of others, and it motivated me to keep going. Nicole was a straight-A student in high school, well known in the neighborhood for her excellence. However, her demands on me grew stronger each day. You know, if you're fluent in French, you have a better chance of getting a job at a good company. That's why I've decided to study abroad in France for a year after high school. Do you know how much it costs to study abroad in France for a year? About $45,000. As Nicole casually mentioned the huge amount needed for studying abroad, I was just shocked, my mouth wide open. Then Nicole added, as if to seal the deal, Why are you so surprised? You can't afford it, right? You work hard every day for your precious daughter, don't you? A little generosity wouldn't hurt. If you can't make your daughter's dreams come true, you're not a real parent. Fine. Swallowing hard, I replied. I knew it would be more than I could handle alone to consider what was to come. But it was something I had to do. That said, with the current job I had, there was no way to earn enough for both college tuition and study abroad expenses. I started to work with these worries on my mind. 3 days later, something happened. My company landed a new client, and not just any client. A renowned company featured in TV commercials. However, only 5 of us from the company could be involved due to limited spots, so it was decided through company discussions. The next day, I was called into the boss's office and found Mr. Oxley, the president of the new client company, sitting there and looking at me. Nice to meet you. I wondered why he was in our boss's office, but the next moment, he told me something unexpected that brightened my face. What drives you to work so hard? I heard from your boss that you're always willing to take extra shifts and are the most dedicated employee here.
I was happy to feel that my boss valued me. Being recognized by others makes you stronger. That day, I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. When I told Mr. Oxley I was working for my daughter's sake, he nodded enthusiastically and clasped his hands.
We need someone as dedicated and hardworking as you. Would you like to come work for us as a janitor?
I was shocked that I was the chosen one, but the biggest surprise came when I saw my paycheck for the month. I had earned $700 more than the previous month. Even accounting for overtime and working on holidays, that was a significant bump. If I keep this up, I'll have enough for Nicole's study abroad. Each time I saw Mr. Oxley, I couldn't thank him enough. I was just overflowing with gratitude. Fast forward 2 years. Nicole got into her dream college, a well-known private university. The academic standards were high, and the tuition was astronomical. And with her study abroad trip looming in a year, there was no time to bask in the joy. The quality of Nicole's student life depends on how hard I work. I have to study, so clean this up. She didn't even clear the table after eating anymore, citing her studies as an excuse. And household chores piled up. Sometimes, when I felt down, I would secretly buy a $1 snack and eat it to change my mood, then continue working hard every single day. By the time Nicole was in her second year of college, she was studying abroad in France. I was on my own, but my love for her never changed. Despite being spoken to harshly, I spent my days sending her lonely WhatsApp messages. Of course, she hardly ever replied, but at least they were marked as read. That was enough to reassure me. Meanwhile, the cost of her study abroad had increased, and I had no option but to take out a loan. It was regrettable to have to do this, but as long as Nicole wasn't affected, it was okay. Send me money for eating out every day. In France, Nicole was room sharing with another study abroad student, so the rent was split. However, she had no intention of cooking, and dining out cost money. She often dined out with her roommate, the daughter of a big company's CEO. Even with Nicole away, I never indulged. My food budget was below $50 per month. Every time I saw delicious food on TV, I had to hold back my drool. I kept imagining Nicole enjoying her life abroad, and that filled my heart and body. A year later, Nicole came back, much chubbier. I couldn't tell her, but she must have gained around 22 pounds. She still looked indifferent to me, but her rounded figure seemed adorable. From now on, Nicole would attend college for a year longer than her classmates, due to her study abroad. She might have learned French in its homeland, but her attitude hasn't changed a bit. The daily demands for money continued. If I ever pushed back, even a little, much harsher words came back at me. Once you start living on your own and working, you'll understand the value of money. Making money isn't easy, you know. Just because you're uneducated and broke doesn't mean I will be. I'm confident that I'll earn enough to live comfortably. Besides, I'll be marrying an elite, so no worries there. All I hear from you is jealousy. I couldn't muster a reply. A feeling of futility clashed with heartache. A year later, Nicole graduated college and landed a job at a major corporation. Though I still had to pay off the loans for Nicole's education. At least she stopped asking for money after getting a job. It was a relief. She never acknowledged my continued hard work from dawn to dusk, but a parent is happy when their child turns out well. With that small joy in my heart, I kept working. 5 years passed like this, with Nicole successfully integrating into the working world. Finally, the end of loan repayments was in sight, and the future looked brighter. Though I had made it this far without ever taking money from Nicole, there was actually one instance where I asked her for financial help. Yet again, I was compared to her and found lacking.
Are you even in a position to say that? You work a dirty job as a janitor with just a high school diploma. I'm a college graduate who studied abroad and now work at a prestigious company, even giving presentations. It's clear as day who has more value. Maybe you should feel the weight of your own insignificance more. At that point, there was nothing more I could do. All I could do was praise myself. Then one day, while waiting for the elevator in a large building for work, the doors opened to reveal Nicole. Nicole! I never expected to run into her at work, so I called out loudly in surprise. But then, I was treated like a stranger. I'm sorry, who are you? I don't know any grungy old hags like you. You must have the wrong person, and don't come too close. You'll make me smell. Nicole glared at me disdainfully, treating me as less than a stranger. When I softly called her name again, her glare only intensified. After that incident, we immediately went back to work. When we finally got home late at night, Nicole was surprisingly still awake. The table was a mess with 4 or 5 empty beer cans and bags of potato chips scattered everywhere. There were even crumbs on the floor. Then, out of nowhere, Nicole takes the beer can in her hand and pours it over my head. What the heck are you doing? The building you were at houses my most important client. If they find out a lowlife like you is my parent, we could lose their business. Don't ever approach me in public again. You look ridiculous drenched in beer. I'd had enough. For the first time, I stood my ground. You think you got to go to college and spend money however you want just because? You're quick to rely on money while being ashamed of me. Sure, janitorial work isn't glamorous, but we all strive to clean what's in front of us. Don't belittle the work. I've always loved and cared for you more than anything else, and you don't get it. I pleaded with tears in my eyes, but it seemed to fall on deaf ears. It's a parent's job to raise their child. You should be grateful that I even gave you life. Ugh, I wish I was someone else's kid. I have no regrets about what I've done for her, but it does hurt not to be acknowledged by my own daughter. I began to question my worth. If I wasn't born, Nicole wouldn't be either. But to not have a family that needs me is just too sad. Having lived for my daughter all these years, feeling as if it was all in vain, leaves me devoid of any will to go on. I then passed out at work. When I woke up, I was staring at a white ceiling and curtains were on my side. I was in a hospital bed. The doctor said I had collapsed from overwork and needed to be hospitalized for 3 weeks. I was more concerned about not being able to go home than my health. I tried to contact Nicole, but she never picked up. The hospital staff finally got through to her, but she never came to visit. I wasn't surprised. Maybe it's easier to accept because Mr. Oxley had been there for me. I'd often chat with Mr. Oxley when I was cleaning his office, and I recently learned he was a single father raising a son. So he understood my family situation and always offered comforting words. From now on, live for yourself. You don't have to push yourself anymore. Mr. Oxley's words had touched me so deeply that the tears I'd held back finally escaped, wetting the hospital sheets. How much have I been pushing myself until now? Knowing that things probably won't change, I felt comforted that Mr. Oxley's words could at least help me appreciate myself a bit more. Hospital life was dull, but the birth of Nicole allowed me a rare peaceful moment. I felt good, mentally and physically reset. 3 weeks passed, and upon discharge, I immediately returned to my usual chores and work. I felt lighter than ever. Just as I was thinking I could keep living this way with Nicole, news of her upcoming marriage arrived out of nowhere. I had no idea when or with whom she'd been dating, and conflicting emotions swelled within me. On one hand, I was genuinely happy for her. On the other, I worried how her personality would mesh with her future husband's. Learning he was the son of a business associate only deepened my concerns. But Nicole was clearly chosen by a wealthy family, so I just smiled to avoid ruining anything. I'm so happy for you, Nicole. I don't know much about the guy, but if you've chosen him, I wish you all the best. I don't need your wishes. I'm someone who walks the walk and talks the talk. Remember, I told you I'd marry an elite, and he's handsome. My life will be the complete opposite of yours. Oh, by the way, you're not invited to the wedding. So, you don't even want to show me your bride self? Exactly. Once I leave this house, I never have to see your face again. That's a relief. Fine, I'll stay out of your life. Live happily with him. As the dialogue unfolded, our fractured relationship was laid bare. Watching Nicole leave a week before her wedding, I sensed no lingering attachment to the house. It felt like the end of everything. I was planning to turn my loneliness into a new start, living peacefully on my own. However, events took a sudden turn. I never saw it coming. On the morning of her wedding, my intuition was oddly loud, even though I wasn't attending. Then my phone rang. It was Nicole. She kept calling, and though I had no idea why, and was busy, the ringing persisted. Reluctantly, I answered, only to pull the phone away from my ear with a torrent of angry words came at me. Why aren't you picking up? A mother should answer her daughter's calls. Huh? You don't even consider me your mom. I'm not free, you know? Aren't you getting married today? Shouldn't you get back to that? I told her something pretty obvious, yet she wouldn't hang up until I agreed to attend her wedding. Do you know why I called? Get over here now. Huh? Where are you? At the wedding venue, of course. I told you I'm inviting you, so hurry up and leave the house. I thought you said you didn't want anyone to know about me. And you'd use Rent-A-Mom. I'm not needed, am I? Enough. You'll regret it forever if you don't see your daughter as a bride. I don't really care anymore. I've given up on fixing our relationship, and I'm trying to move on, so stop bothering me. I'm hanging up. Wait, listen! Just as I was about to hang up, Nicole got noticeably flustered and started talking fast. Then, she quickly spilled the reason why she wanted to invite me to the wedding. So, I did hire Rent-A-Mom, but father-in-law asked, This lady isn't Beverly, is it? When will the real Beverly, the mother, come? You know Mr. Oxley? The CEO of KSD? Yes, he was praising you and even said he respected you. He said he was honored that his son could marry the daughter of someone like me. He keeps pushing. You're surely inviting Beverly, right? As it turns out, Nicole's husband-to-be is the son of the CEO who once helped me out of a tight spot. It seemed almost miraculous that now Nicole was also indebted to Mr. Oxley. We've met before, remember? I was cleaning at Mr. Oxley's company. He's been good to me for a long time. He's someone who has really helped me out. Just come to the venue as soon as possible, or my wedding will be ruined. But not even a hint of a desire to attend Nicole's wedding remained in my heart, so I naturally declined. Regardless of what you say, I'm not going. You said to walk the walk and talk the talk, right? Then stand by your words. Actually, Mr. Oxley had filled me in on Nicole's wedding plans before she had. I'd also told him that Nicole said she didn't want me at the wedding, and he told me he had a plan for the day. And now that plan was in motion. People keep annoying me saying, Nicole's mom is such an amazing person, and you should be more grateful for a mother who works herself to the bone for you. So, everyone's saying that, huh? That's nice. What do you think, Nicole? I'm mad that you've been spreading nonsense. Come here right now and rave about how kind and good I am. Listening to Nicole's never-ending selfish and disrespectful words, my mood sank even lower. I really didn't want to hear anything more from Nicole. Finally, I hung up the phone, and ignoring multiple calls that came afterward, went on with my chores. Later on, Mr. Oxley came by with a DVD of the wedding ceremony. As we watched it, I was deeply moved by how he spoke up on my behalf. Nicole's mother, Beverly, worked from dusk to dawn to cover Nicole's high school and college tuition. and even managed to send her abroad for studies. She took out loans to make up for the shortfall, striving to ensure that Nicole would not have to struggle. Yet despite witnessing Beverly's sacrifice, Nicole has been nothing but self-centered. She never worked a part-time job and constantly demanded money from Beverly, treating her with utter disrespect. She even went as far as to exclude her own mother from her wedding, opting for a rent-a-mom instead. Ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to all boo the bride. The crowd erupted in a chorus of boos, leaving Nicole staring at the floor, her face pale as a ghost. Her groom was shaking as he doused her with wine from his glass. I remember a time when Nicole did the same thing to me with beer. I never thought her groom would return the favor. A love that fails to acknowledge such tremendous parental sacrifice is a lie. I can't trust you anymore, Nicole. You are less than a stranger to me. He then left the venue, leaving Nicole standing there stunned. Her pristine white wedding dress was now stained red with wine and dirtied by sweat and tears, making her look worse than a janitor. Normally, a parent would be devastated to see their child go through such an experience, but oddly enough, I found myself able to laugh. A week later, Nicole called me from a payphone. "You've forgiven me by now, right? I need a place to stay. I lost my job." That house belongs to someone else now, so coming back would be pointless. And frankly, I have no intention of dealing with you anymore. It's my turn to find happiness. Goodbye. The next day, I changed my mobile number, WhatsApp, and email address to cut off all contact with Nicole. I sold the house quickly, pocketing $200,000. And all this boldness, I owe it all to Mr. Oxley. As Dobie and I got to know each other, we began to see ourselves as life partners for our second acts. Now we cherish our happiness every day as we engage in lively conversations that feel like a talk show. Dobie's son has a new girlfriend who comes over often. She's far better than Nicole, and I plan to treat her like the daughter I never had. I guess a dropout wife is too embarrassing, so the engagement's off. Since your educational background is the cause, I absolutely won't pay any cancellation fees. These unbelievable words came from his mom's mouth on the day of the wedding, and then the terrible betrayal from him to me. I don't mind the engagement being called off. Following me, my uncle also said, "Then our engagement with your family is off as well." What? My name is Emily. I'm 27 years old. Currently, I'm a company employee. My older brother, who is 3 years older than me, works for a major corporation and has been stationed overseas for the past 3 years. My parents died in a car accident when I was in the first year of high school. For me, it was a shock and loss too great to bear, and I couldn't go to school or even eat. My heart was shattered. My brother, relatives, and friends all encouraged me, but the loss of my parents, especially my mom, who was always my emotional support, was indescribable. Weakened in both body and spirit, I repeatedly entered and left the hospital. Due to insufficient attendance, I repeated a year and eventually dropped out of high school. Later, with the help of my brother, an aunt, and uncle, I started visiting the hospital and gradually recovered over time. When our parents died, my brother was in his first year of college. He must have been as shocked as I was, but he always cared for me and worked hard in his studies, securing a job at a major company. He is my pride. I can never thank him enough. It was because of him that I could start doing things little by little. I gradually regained my daily life by doing chores like cleaning, laundry, and cooking with my brother's help. But just as grateful as I am to my brother are my aunt and uncle. My uncle, an entrepreneur, is my mother's brother, and has always adored us since we were little. Despite the shock of losing his sister, he was more supportive than any other relative, trying to protect my brother and me. When I finally started going out and meeting friends, leading a normal life, my uncle suggested I try part-time work. He offered me a job at his advertising agency. Initially, I handled simple clerical and miscellaneous tasks. This increased my opportunities to communicate with colleagues, and though I was nervous at first, I gradually got used to it. My uncle must have placed me there to get accustomed to interacting with people. Some were initially skeptical about nepotism, but as I worked seriously, not wanting to tarnish my uncle's reputation, I gained their trust and made good friends. Since my uncle hires based on character and competence rather than educational background, there were few who saw me in a particularly special light. 3 years later, I passed the employee examination and became a full-time employee. There are many wonderful designers in my uncle's company. I've always loved drawing, and now I'm increasingly interested in design work, studying every day while assisting. I met my boyfriend 2 years ago. I met him at a drinking party with a senior colleague from the company. Lucas, my boyfriend, works for his father's company, planning to take over eventually. I overheard him talking about how both his parents graduated from famous universities, and his siblings and relatives are doctors and lawyers. So I never imagined he would approach me. I hesitated, wondering if I was good enough for someone like him, but he seemed to really like my appearance and actively pursued me. As we continued to date, I fell for him too. Having missed out on youth during my school days, everything with my first boyfriend was exciting and dazzling. Having become good at cooking and housework during my long rehabilitation at home, I devotedly cared for him. And now he has proposed, and we are getting married. Lucas is a man of action, having already booked the venue and planned the outfits and menu by the time I went to meet his family. Hey Lucas, does my outfit look okay?
There's no need to be nervous, Emily. You're cute. And both Dad and Mom are really nice people.
Even if you say that, I'm still nervous. His house, in a quiet residential area, was a large single-family home with an impressive gate. We were ushered into a spacious dining room. Nice to meet you. I'm Emily. I'm in a relationship with Lucas, with marriage in mind. Thank you for having me today.
Ah, so you're Lucas's partner. What a lovely young lady. So which university did you attend? Your educational background. Where did you graduate from?
I was surprised by the abrupt question, but answered honestly. Yes, I haven't graduated from university. I dropped out of high school.
What? What?
Lucas and his parents exclaimed together.
Hey, a dropout? Not even a high school graduate? I absolutely forbid marriage with such a woman. Lucas, what's wrong with you? I've always said the marriage partner should have a minimum deviation score of 60. No, I'm hearing about the dropout thing for the first time, too. Wow, really? I assumed she was a college graduate since she came to that drinking party.
Didn't I tell you about losing my parents in high school and falling ill? I should have mentioned it at that time. I answered him in a low voice, then turned back to his parents. I lost my parents in an accident in high school and became mentally and physically ill from the shock. It took time to fully recover, and I ended up dropping out.
That's sympathetic, but the fact remains you're a dropout.
His mother, while expressing sympathy, confirmed with a cold look. Yes, but since then, I've recovered and now work properly as a full-time employee. His dad quickly interjected.
That doesn't matter. I can't imagine someone who dropped out becoming part of our family. No one in our clan has just a high school education.
I agree. Lucas, having a marriage partner on the same level is very important.
Come on, both of you. Calm down. Emily is good at cooking and very capable. She devotes herself to me. That's only natural. I won't allow this marriage.
Please. I may not have a degree, but I work with pride, and I truly care about Lucas. His mom laughed at my plea through her nose. If you want to get married, at least bring a college graduation title. Only college graduates can enter our family.
That's the way it is. Anyway, let's leave it at that for today. I'll take her home, Dad. Mom, listen to my side of the story later.
With that, he led me outside, his parents being unyielding.
Sorry about my parents. Well, Dad's a president, and everyone in our family graduated from college, so it's not surprising they're shocked. I was a bit surprised, too.
He started talking as we walked. I'm sorry, Lucas. I thought I had told you.
I remember hearing that your parents passed away.
What should I do? Should I speak to your parents again on another day?
It's fine. I'll talk to them when I get home. After all, The wedding venue is already booked and preparations are underway. They'll have to accept it once they hear that. I felt a little relieved by his confident words. I couldn't tell my aunt and uncle, who were as happy as real parents to hear about my marriage, about today's events. I didn't want to cause them unnecessary worry. That night I called my brother for the first time in a while. Even though he's overseas, it's in an area where we can easily call or email.
Wow, that must have been tough, Emily. Are you okay? Even if things are going well with him, family can't be ignored in marriage. I'm worried about you marrying such a person. I want you to be absolutely happy.
Thank you, brother. He said he'll persuade them, so I'll try a little harder and trust him.
Okay, call me if anything happens.
Talking to my brother calmed me down. A few days later, my boyfriend brought good news.
It's okay. Dad and Mom have accepted it. After all, I want to marry you, Emily.
Really? That's great. Thank you, Lucas. Should I greet them again?
No, I think it's better to give it some time now. Let's properly prepare for the wedding and hold an impressive ceremony that everyone will be moved by.
Okay, that was a relief. Later, I reported to my brother and handed the wedding invitations to my aunt and uncle again. My brother lamented that he couldn't return home due to work, which was disappointing, but my aunt promised to take photos and videos, saying she'd send them, as she was very excited. Then came the wedding day. I was so glad to have reached this day. After getting dressed and finishing my hair and makeup, my aunt entered the waiting room. Wow, Emily, you're so beautiful. Congratulations on today. Thank you, Aunt. It's thanks to you and Uncle that I've made it to this day. Oh, stop, Emily. I'm going to start crying before the ceremony. My aunt indeed looked teary-eyed, and I felt my eyes welling up too. Oh, Auntie, you're making me cry too. I just got my makeup done by a professional, so I need to hold back the tears. By the way, where is Uncle? I think he'll be here soon, but I wonder if he's okay. He might cry more than me when he sees you in your dress. As my aunt said this with a smile, there was a loud knock at the door. Oh, is that Uncle? However, the ones who entered were Lucas, who was to be my groom, and his parents. Ah, nice to meet you. I'm Emily's aunt. Today is such a fine day.
Wow, Emily, nice dress. I always knew I liked your looks.
Interrupting my aunt's greeting, Lucas's behavior felt off, and I was a bit taken aback. Lucas, what's wrong? Are you changing clothes later?
Well, about that, it turns out that us marrying is impossible.
I was confused by his words, making a puzzled face. My aunt beside me had the same expression. What do you mean it's impossible? We are about to have our ceremony. Then his mom stepped forward and said triumphantly, Didn't expect to meet you again. Sorry, but a dropout wife is too embarrassing, so the engagement is off. What? We'll treat this marriage as if it never happened. Since your educational background is the cause, we absolutely won't pay any cancellation fees. That's outrageous. Why bring this up now? You knew about my education and had agreed to the marriage. Not at all. I never agreed from the beginning. I've said so, didn't I?
Of course, we can't accept anyone with less than a deviation score of 60.
Both his mom and dad, who are supposed to be my future in-laws, echoed each other. Their attitude towards me, a high school dropout, hadn't changed since we first met. Shocked, I still managed to ask Lucas. Lucas, you said your parents had agreed, right? That everything was fine and we were proceeding with the wedding preparations? Hearing my desperate words, he listened with a mocking smile. I realized something. Don't tell me. You lied. You knew they would never agree to marry me.
Of course. It's your fault for not telling me properly that you're a dropout. But since the venue was booked, I thought I'd let you dream a bit.
That's awful. I trusted you, Lucas.
As the future president, and with a family full of university graduates, I can't marry a dropout. You should have realized that.
His casual words made my voice tremble. That's terrible. If that was the case, you should have said so when your parents opposed. Then he leaned in and whispered in my ear.
Don't worry. We can't marry, but I'll still be with you. You may be a dropout, but I really like your face and body. I don't want to break up. I couldn't believe my ears. So he wants me to be his mistress? He might really like me? But in the end, that wasn't true love. He planned to use me as a convenient woman who would continue to serve him. I tried desperately to hold back tears. I won't shed tears for such a man. His words revealed not only his parents' true nature, but his own as well. I took a deep breath and raised my head. Understood. I don't mind the engagement being off. He was surprised by my firm statement. Well, you finally understand. Why don't you take a commemorative photo in that dress, Dropout? Since you'll be paying the cancellation fee anyway. His mom laughed loudly, but I faced her without flinching. Why would that be? I was ready to have a wedding. The reason for cancellation is solely because you unilaterally called off the engagement. The cancellation is due to you being a dropout, so we absolutely won't pay. Engagement off? Such unrest here. Suddenly a voice sounded. Uncle? Auntie? My aunt sounded relieved. She had been standing beside me, worriedly amidst this unreasonable family's outrageous statements. I came to see my beautiful niece's big day, only to find such commotion before the ceremony. I'm her uncle. I was supposed to attend today in place of her father. While saying this, my uncle handed out business cards with a smile. Even in such a situation, I've been listening at the entrance. So because Emily is a dropout, the engagement is off, and this marriage is not happening. Yes, that's right. If you were listening, then you know the story. Next to Lucas's mom, who was looking down on my uncle, his dad, having seen the business card, exclaimed, Wait a minute. But it was too late. Almost at the same time, my uncle said, Then our engagement is off too. From now on, we'll have no contracts of business with your company. What? Lucas looked stunned, and so did his mom. The current advertising campaign we have is ending this month. We will not enter into any new contracts, so you are not allowed to use any of our advertisements or designs in the future. What? Only his dad turned pale and shouted, Starting next month, you can't use anything designed by us for your company's promotions. You better get busy letting people know, collecting or finding replacements, or you won't make it in time. It's going to be a busy time for you. No. Wait. Canceling the contract would be a problem. Why so suddenly? Why? Can't you understand? Being her uncle, despite being hardly educated, you insulted my niece, who is like a daughter to me. You were prepared for this, right? I mean, we had no idea this young lady was your niece. I should have told you where my niece works. Didn't you think of her as an important employee of your business partner, regardless of our blood relation? Did you forget everything else upon hearing she was a dropout, Mr. Highly Educated? Well, or did you think a dropout couldn't do any significant work and is just a low-level employee? I have no intention of cooperating with a company that insults my niece to this extent. This is the end of our business partnership with your company. Wait, I apologize. You guys too. What's the matter, Dad? Why are you scared of Emily's uncle? That's right. There's no need to humble ourselves before the uncle of some dropout girl. Look at the business card, idiots. This man is the president of Daniel Design. Lucas hastily looked at the business card. Daniel, as in that Daniel? The top creator in the country who started his own major advertising company after leaving a big firm? As he said this, the color drained from his face. Yes, he's the top of an advertising production company. Our business was declining, but we managed to recover thanks to getting him to handle our advertising. Why? How can such a prestigious person have a niece who's a dropout? The only strange thing here is you, for denying her honor just because she's a dropout. She didn't want to worry me, so she never talked about it, but I heard from her brother over the phone. What? I was relieved to hear that you had accepted the marriage, but you all are really hopeless. What? This matter will be made known, not only to our company, but also to other companies we have business alliances with. It will be interesting to see if any of them continue to work with your company. Lucas and his dad turned pale. However, his mom, either not understanding or still too arrogant, remained defiant. Humph! So what if he's Daniel's something? He's just one designer. There are other famous people we can rely on, and we can just go to the biggest company. You
despite being highly educated, don't seem to understand the seriousness of the situation. Think a major advertising agency will deal with a company that has made an enemy of me? What? I've maintained good relations with my previous company, even after going independent, and I have goodwill with other major firms, including the biggest ones. Fortunately, everyone wants to use Daniel's name. What? Shut up, damn it. Hey, Lucas, why don't you say something? This all started because you said you wouldn't let me marry her unless her deviation score was over 60. At this point, Lucas's family was at odds with each other. Just apologize. And hey, let's agree to the marriage. Let's have the ceremony now. Apologizing is too late. Do you realize how much your thoughtless words have hurt Emily? You have education, but no heart. Ugh! Lucas's family shrank back at my uncle's stern reprimand. Emily, do you still want to marry him? My uncle asked me in a gentle voice. Of course not. I already answered before you arrived. I'm fine with the engagement being called off, I replied with a bright smile, to which my uncle also smiled back. Right, that was it. After that, of course, the wedding did not take place, and our marriage was called off. Lucas's family desperately pleaded with my uncle and me to reconsider, but it was of no use. And the cancellation fee for the ceremony was entirely borne by the groom's side. His mom exclaimed, "The groom wanted to get married, but since the bride called off the engagement, she should pay." But one of the staff members at the venue, who had been taking care of my preparations, interjected. For safety and to handle unreasonable claims, we have security cameras installed in the dressing room. We have recorded everything, so if you need to see it for the discussion about the cancellation fee, we can show you. What will you do? At this, Lucas's mom was at a loss for words, and valuing appearance and face above all, agreed to pay. Knowing that her disparaging and belittling treatment of me was captured on video, she bit her lip in discomfort. And as promised, my uncle terminated the business partnership with Lucas's dad's company. Losing all the advertising projects handled by Daniel Design, Lucas's dad's company's sales plummeted. The story of the losing swan advertising spread widely, and my former boyfriend Lucas is reportedly furious, saying he won't inherit a company that's on the brink of bankruptcy. My uncle and our company's designers always seriously consider how to best showcase a client's products and how to convey their appeal to consumers. Among these designers are those who only graduated from high school or vocational school. Their educational background might be considered inferior by Lucas's family, but they are incredible in both human qualities and actual work performance, and I deeply respect them and strive to catch up. Education isn't useless, but I do wish I could have graduated from high school. But at least I've never been ashamed of my life. Losing my beloved dad and mom is still a sorrowful memory, but I have my brother and aunt and uncle. This incident was painful, but it deepened our bond, feeling like a true family. I passed my color certification exam, expanding the areas I can be entrusted with at work. This way, I want to keep climbing the steps one at a time. Looking up at the sky on my way home from work, I thought, Dad, Mom, I'm sorry for always worrying you, but I'm happy. I'll continue to live my life in my own way, and someday I'll build a happy family with someone who accepts me as I am. A star twinkled in the sky. It felt like my parents were telling me to keep going.